Welcome to Mineral Talks Live, the monthly live mineral webinar that brings you in-depth and in-person interviews with mineral people from around the world. Mineral Talks Live is brought to you by a joint effort among the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, the SMMP, and Blue Cap Productions. Tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay connected to your mineral world. Now, broadcasting live from beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, the land of aloha, ukuleles, and shakas, this is Mineral Talks Live. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone, and welcome to our final Mineral Talks Live episode for 2024. It's been a great year, and all of us here at Mineral Talks Live are truly grateful to all the fantastic guests we've had on the show, and we're grateful to all of you viewers for tuning in month after month. Today is December 4th, and this is our 93rd episode of Mineral Talks Live, your favorite mineral talk show on the internet. I'm your host, Brian Swoboda, and together with the rest of my jolly and merry team, Dr. Raquel Alonso Perez from the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, and Dr. Eloise Gaillou from the Society of Mineral Museum Professionals, also known as SMMP, and from the Paris School of Mines, we want to welcome you to today's show. If you missed any of our past programs, you can always catch a rebroadcast on our Mineral Talks Live YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@Mineral Talks Live. Remember to click the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever we post a new episode, and make sure you keep your eyes peeled for our upcoming announcements. We have a fantastic lineup of people we'll be interviewing for 2025, and you're not going to want to miss any of those. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Mineral Talks Live is a monthly mineral talk show that airs live on the first Wednesday of every month. Our goal has always been to connect you with the members of the mineral collecting community via our interviews with some of the best curatrix, curators, collectors, dealers, miners, researchers, artists, and media people in the mineral world. Through the miracle of technology, I'm coming to you live from Honolulu, Hawaii, and Raquel is broadcasting straight from Cambridge, Massachusetts, while Eloise is beaming in directly from her home in Paris, France. So this is truly an international show, and I believe this is the only mineral talk show online that is 2/3 owned by women. So thank you for supporting that. One of the other things that makes this program unique is that this is not only a live show, but it's a show where you get to interact with our guests. To participate, all you have to do is type your comments in the chat or the Q&A features, both of which are located at the bottom of your Zoom window. The chat feature allows you to instantly send messages to everyone watching this live show, so we encourage you to be as active as you'd like in the chat during the show. And while our guests and I generally don't see your messages during our conversation, throughout the show, both Raquel and Eloise will be monitoring the chat area and will be very active there. Now, occasionally they may even interject a question or comment to us during the interview, so don't be shy if you want to ask something. Also, when you log on, we ask you to send a message to everyone letting us know where you're tuning in from so we can see how far around the world we're reaching. Now, if you happen to have a question for our guest that's maybe a little bit more detailed or needs a bit of a longer answer, go ahead and use the Q&A feature, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the show. Finally, towards the end of the program, you'll see a window pop up on your screen, and this is our quick fire 5 questions segment to see how well all of us know our guests. So test your knowledge, play along. Who knows? We may even have a good icebreaker for you the next time you see our guest in person. And speaking of today's guests, today we're headed to Western France, to the 6th largest city in France, Nantes. And here at the University of Nantes, we're getting together with a multi-award recipient for his outstanding work in the definition and advancement of the science of gemology. Ladies and gentlemen, direct from his own home, the globally recognized research scientist, Dr. Emmanuel Fritsch. Emmanuel, how are you today?
Great. Very honored to be here. I want to say hello to everybody. I saw some well-known names and friends coming up on the chat, so I just want to say hello to everybody. Very nice for you to join, and so we may have some fun for an hour or so.
Oh, I think we're going to have a lot more fun, and I have a feeling it may end up running a little bit more than an hour. Not too much more than an hour, because Raquel gets a little bit upset when I talk too much. And Emmanuel, thank you for playing along with the little reindeer games and wearing your Santa hat and having little decorations on your camera.
And the green and red bow tie as well.
Superb. Now, Manuel, usually I like to start an interview by turning back the clock a little bit and talking about the origin stories. So let's start with you. How did you first get involved with gems and minerals? What was kind of the catalyst when you were young, I assume, that led you down this road?
Well, actually, there are two separate stories for gems and minerals.
Oh.
The first one about gems, I was reminded by my mom when I really became a gemologist and said, remember, when you're really little and we'll go shopping, she could leave me at the shopping mall in front of the jeweler's showcase. And I could stay there like a good 15 minutes, no problem. She could go buy the bread or buy some veggies and fruit and come back and pick me up. I would stay there and I was perfectly happy. And she saw that I had some connection to gems, perhaps, at that point, or jewelry. But really, the mineral story started much later. We have an education system. So when you start the university in the US, there is the option in France to do what is called preparatory classes to prepare for competitive examination for what we call the higher school system. And engineering school there, if you will. And during these preparatory classes, I met some friends who actually were going to a mineral show. They were my colleagues in the class and said, "Do you want to come?" I said, "Well, sure, why not? I've never done that." And I went, and I absolutely loved it. For the French people, that was the old Pierre M. Saint-Jacques show in Paris. And I really wanted to collect minerals. I wanted to get everything, actually. And so that's how that's what I remember as being my final hookup with minerals, actually. And that got worse and worse as my passion grew. I should mention one thing is what I was doing after my engineering school, I did a PhD in Paris, and I wanted to go to a specific lab, which is the lab on which depends the collection of minerals from Jussieu. You know, the one that at the time was headed by Pierre Barian, Jean-Claude Bouliard succeeded, and now with Paula. But Pierre Barian was kind of my mentor, and I wanted to go to this lab because he was there. So actually, my PhD topic is on glass, which is kind of a weird thing for a mineral collector. But
on glass, interesting.
For this PhD, so I took it.
So, what was the topic of your PhD there? You say glass, but what specifically about glass?
Okay, so the topic was on silica glass, which is a very specific glass, the very pure glass, with a specific niche kind of application in industry. And the topic was about parasitic coloration in glass. It was supposed to come out completely colorless. Sometimes it came out so dark brown that it was almost black, depending on thickness, or it came out pink, or it came out blue, or it came out yellow. And they were clearly accidents, but they wanted to understand the origin of this color. So that's how I got hooked up to another topic that's been very important in my career, which is the origin of color. So I started with glass, and because I was into minerals, I got interested in the topic about minerals, so wrote article for a Mineral Collector journal on that topic. And so that sort of article, which reviews the origin of color in minerals, turned into an article that reviews the origin of color in gems, actually. I was lucky enough to co-author with George Rossman, who was my mentor when I got to GIA, together with Gordon Brown and a few others. And so that article with George, actually, on the origin of color in gems, actually has been following my whole career in gemology. And I'm thinking of updating it, actually, because it's getting old.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, let me wind that back for a moment. When your friends invited you to go to the mineral show, what was it about the minerals? You say that you were fascinated by the minerals. Do you remember what quality of the minerals first grabbed your attention and really kind of sucked you in?
Well, I knew a bit about crystallography because I was in the program that we had to study, but nevertheless, I was astonished by the colors, the shapes, and also the stories that people were telling, which I realize
Sure.
now some of them are perhaps not totally true, but there are good stories going along with mineral collecting. So all these aspects were really interesting to me. And I saw that people were quite passionate about it. And that kind of surprised me because I like minerals, but I didn't have that. There are other things I'm interested in. Actually, I have several collections, actually, not just minerals. I have a Thai collection. Some of the people know about that are
Bow
listening
tie
to us.
collection or a
Thai
standard
collection,
tie
yeah.
collection?
I have
Bow
more than
tie.
500 at home, so speak to my wife
Come
about it.
on.
She would like to see that collection out of the house.
Okay,
I
well,
have, you
I've
may
been
see.
collecting these Aloha shirts since we started the show. The first year I wore a different shirt for every show. So my collection now is probably 60. When I get to 500, I'm going to come visit you and we're going to have one big party, shirts and bow ties, over 500 varieties. Huh?
I bet if
Good?
you get to 500 shirts, you're going to have to move. But
I think so, because I think my wife will kick me out.
I also got into collecting chemistry glasses because I found a lot of those in a lab in Paris where I did my PhD. And people told me, well, if you're interested in it, just take them because we don't use them anymore. So I actually have a collection. Some of them you may see behind me on the higher shelves. And so that converted into, when I got discovered uranium glass, I started a collection of uranium glasses, which stopped, thankfully. But my best piece is a 1840 piece from a very famous glass manufacturer in the east of France in uranium glass.
Oh
So,
my God.
though I have a few other old postcards, for example, and then I collected them first about planes actually, because the early history of aviation, you always very experimental plane, let's say, where they
Right.
had
Yeah.
postcards showing plane accidents, crashes and stuff like that, or plane designs that are rather, you kind of wonder how that managed to fly, actually.
Right.
So I was fascinated by that. Then it evolved, and I got into original collection, and then I got into. Lately I've stopped more or less that collection because you can't do everything. But the later ones I got were about gems actually, and there is a very difficult to find postcard from the earliest 20th century, sorry, showing actually a mineral dealer, but the guy is more like he has some minerals lying about. He's holding a bottle and he's selling minerals. So it's
He's selling the lifestyle.
yeah. There's something about the lifestyle. Could match with some of the mineral dealers we know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
No
So,
names.
Emmanuel, obviously you've got bitten by the collection bugs. Were your
Yeah,
parents collectors at all?
not at all.
Not at all. So, how did you first start collecting anything, and what was that thing that you collected?
I don't really know. I mean, we collected stamps. There was when I was a kid, because that was the thing that everybody was doing. So everybody collected stamps. So maybe that's where I got the bug. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I'm curious about lots of things, so I tend to accumulate things that I find of interest. I have lots. One of the things I started to do at one point, but I stopped because it's hard to find, is uh, old tools that were so weird you really wondered what they were used for. I have a few of those.
Oh my
You know,
God.
like, what can you use that for? I have no idea.
I
But
imagine
then
an
you get
afternoon in your house would just be like walking through a museum of curios.
Yeah, it's very much my mentality. You know, they had this old French expression, which is cabinet de curiosité or
Yes,
curiosity cabinets, which the kings used to have actually. It was sort of a
exactly.
mellow of minerals and other things. And so it's a little bit my mentality, as you can judge from the background here.
I love it. I love it. And for our viewers, Emmanuel earlier said that the collection at Jussieu was so important for him. It's basically the Sorbonne Museum, and we've had other people on the show that have been incredibly influenced by that. Salim Ede immediately comes to mind. So, Emmanuel,
Yeah.
you went to GIA, and this was after you got your PhD in France. You went to GIA. What kind of research did you do there, and how did that affect the gemology market?
Okay, when I came to GIA, the very first colored synthetic diamond came about. They were the Sumitomo synthetic diamond. And so I studied on that subject actually. And
Okay.
I have maintained an interest on the synthetic diamond subject. If you go back so I studied in February 86. I met GIA at Tucson show, believe it or not. I had no way to get to Tucson to California. So well-known gem photographer Tino Hamid actually was kind enough to drive me back to LA with my luggage and drive me to LA with my luggage. And so we started working on synthetic diamonds, which was a big deal at the time. And there was a lot of fear in the industry about the fact they'd be mistaken for natural diamond. At the time, they were all yellow, and then they became, you had the blue and the colorless one, and then they were all high pressure, high temperature synthetics. Then we evolved over the year with CVD. So that was a big project there. Another big project was one on colored diamonds. So trying to identify those for which the color was truly natural from those that
Okay.
had been irradiated and heat treated. At the time, there was mostly heat. Other treatments exist now. So the question that you find in any gem lab, GIA and elsewhere, is basically, is it true or fake? But there are several levels of fake. You know, you have the truly natural stone. You have the natural stone that have been enhanced by irradiation and heating or coating or heat treatment or all sorts of things like that. And you have the truly synthetic stone, which is the same general chemistry as a natural equivalent, but was grown entirely in the lab, which was the case for the synthetic diamonds. So we established criteria to make the difference between those early synthetics and the natural diamond. And then you have the imitation, which is not really much of a problem in a gem lab. You don't see that many imitations, but I find them interesting. Of course, they just look like, say, a ruby or an emerald, but they are nothing like a ruby or an emerald from a point of view of chemistry or structure. So that's
So,
what we do in gem labs.
so prior to your time there at GIA, is it fair to say that gem labs did not exist, or if they did, they were in their infancy?
Oh no, there were already quite a few gem labs, but it's true that the number of gem labs around the world are considerably increased.
Okay.
And I think that it's just that the consumer wants to know more about what he buys. Would it be a gem or something else? And so that created many gem labs, and that created the whole, I would say politely, a graduation of gem labs, you know, with some doing only the simple stuff and some doing the more sophisticated stuff, with small labs that do sometimes a very good job, actually. And the lab, which have some research aspects to them, try to be on the cutting edge of the gem identification techniques and develop new criteria to separate, say, one of the projects, for example, as early at GA, was also natural versus synthetic amethyst. So when you have an amethyst, it has a color of an amethyst. If there are no inclusions in it, that doesn't help much. If there is no color zoning whatsoever, that doesn't help much either. So what do you do? So we found an argument, a good criterion based on infrared spectroscopy, for example. So not all the labs have infrared spectrometers, clearly, because they come at a certain price. But, you can do the classical gemology and already do a lot of things. So there are a variety of gem labs. Some do very simple things. Some are at the cutting edge doing research and all that, and everything in between. And what I do actually right now at the university is try to develop criteria in relation with gem labs. And of course, the closest gem lab to me is the Laboratoire Français de Gémologie, which is the gem lab in Paris, the main gem lab in Paris. There are others. And so we work on try to develop new criteria or refine criteria, as we like to say, because we start with a good idea, but it's not quite true in all cases. So you go on and make more research and discover that actually there are this and that nuance to add for the criterion to be really true. And so that's mostly what we do at the university research level.
So talk to me about what was the catalyst for the change? Why did you leave GIA and come back to France?
Okay, so you have to understand that I'm from a family of teachers. My father was a teacher, my mother is a teacher, my sister was a teacher. She's retired now. So guess what? I became a teacher. So I think there was an element of that, certainly. I always had in my blood, I was raised, dinner table, we talk about education, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, so I was raised in that environment. So I wanted to do the same when I was at GIA, try to develop things to teach the instructors there. Things I remember doing things on 3D jet, for example, BJED. And so I always like to share and try to increase the educational level of whoever was willing to listen to me at any level, really. I love talking to kids, small kids, or I was talking to, you call high school students a few days ago. I had 5 of them for 3 hours, and I've been asked to do something for also high school students, but older ones in January, which is a thing I like to do, which is to show them what a scientist is, because they don't know what a scientist is, and they might be interested in that. And it's also an occasion to talk about prepare your future, how do you choose your job for the future, and how I chose mine, and so this, pep talks in a way, but also showing them what research is all about, because they think that all research scientists are geniuses, and I'm here to prove that they're not. George Rossman is a genius. I'm not. Let's put it that way. So that being said, I feel more comfortable now. So it's just to tell them that, I didn't have fantastic grade at school. I'm sort of a normal guy, and yet I'm a research scientist. And why did that happen? So it sort of reassures them, I think. So I like to do that. So I like to do education, motivate young people to do what they like to do, not necessarily what I do, what they would like to do. And of course, if they are interested in minerals and gem, that's come my way, please.
That's an added plus, right?
Do an internship with me, and I'll start you on some really interesting topics. So
now, how did you end up at the University of Nantes? Did you grow up in that area, or how did you find that?
No, actually, I grew up just south of Paris in the suburbs.
Okay.
And the fact was that I learned when I was at GIA that a French dude by the name of Bernard Lanier started a gemology program, an advanced gemology program at the University of Nantes. So I, of course, went to visit Bernard on one of my trips to France.
I see.
And we got along famously. And he said, but in 10 years from now, I'm probably going to retire. So, if you are ever interested, think about it. So that was just something mentioned in passing in the beginning, but that became more serious with the years. And especially because, university professor, when you were raised in a family like mine, where my mother was a music teacher, my father was a French teacher, university professor were very much looked upon as, a very favorable position. So, I was a bit influenced by that, I must say. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And plus, after 10 years at GIA, it's like either you decide to stay there for your entire life,
sure,
which some people have done. If Jim Shigley is listening, he's one of them. Hi, Jim. And if otherwise, you have to do something else. So I had that opportunity in France. My motivation was not actually, most people believe that I wanted to go back to France, but no, I just wanted to teach. And I would have found an opportunity in the US, I might have taken it. But it just so happened that it was in France that I was offered a good opportunity.
Oh, that's super. Now, was it there that you started working on the Gemology University diploma?
Yes, actually, it was already created when I came. And it was very different from what it is today, needless to say.
Describe what it was at first and describe what it evolved to today so that our viewers can understand.
Okay. So basically, the point was to take people who were jewelers. So they had a gemological diploma, a classic gemological diploma, like a GG or an FGA or the French equivalent or German equivalent, or whatever around the world will take any classical gemology diploma and try to add to that a little more scientific culture, initiate people to research by giving them a topic to do experiments with. And so write a report. Writing a report is not as easy as you might think if you have never done it. And so that was part of the education. The other part was, of course, to introduce them to the laboratory techniques that are not classical gemology, that are used in the lab. So, for example, UV visible spectroscopy. At the time, Bernard did a lot of X-ray diffraction, but that's not terribly useful in a gemological lab. So I started doing infrared spectroscopy when I got there seriously, and then luminescence spectroscopy, UV visible. Of course, I had done a lot of that at GIA. He was doing a little bit. I did a lot more. So basically, he did a lot of geology actually, because he was a deep earth geologist to start with. So he was qualified to talk about ruby deposits. Actually, incidentally, Bernard discovered a very small ruby deposit in France, which actually is very similar to Longido. The specimens are, if you show some of the pictures, that those are the students looking at the specimen from our geology collection for gemologists. We have those two specimens in there. Yeah. So the lower specimen, the small one, is from the French deposit. And the bigger one I have in my right hand in the picture is from Longido. So it's very much the same type of stuff. In Longido, you have more zoisite than amphibolite. In the French deposit, it's really dark green amphibolite, but it's very much the same type of deposit and very similar looking.
How exciting!
Yeah. So, but it's so small a deposit that actually it was entirely dug out by amateurs, actually. It's very small, a few cubic meters, actually. So that was one of the things he was doing very well, and a lot of that collection is from him. But I did a lot more of the spectroscopy. He was already using the SEM and the microanalysis with energy dispersive spectroscopy that you could do. So do the chemistry basically through that kind of a tool. So I did the X-ray fluorescence, which I had practiced at GIA, and so on and so forth. So nowadays, you have a program that is much longer, actually, than it used to be. We keep adding weeks to it. And nowadays, it's 6 weeks where we'll introduce you to all the methods that are used routinely in a gem lab. You'll have to do a bibliographic report, which wasn't done at the time, actually. And also an experimental report was the only thing that you were asked about at the time. And so it's become much more complete, perhaps, than it was, but also gemology has evolved enormously in the last 30 years, and probably last 40 years. So with the onset of spectroscopies being used routinely in gemology, like infrared spectroscopy, which I like to describe as the one is most often used actually in gemological lab. That's something you can use for a diamond, like you can use it for gem, and you can use it for corundum. It still be perhaps useful for tourmaline and so on and so forth. So actually very useful spectroscopy, which was not that developed when Bernard actually started the program. There was no real reason to do a lot of it, but it developed enormously starting around the late 90s, well, in the 90s, really, late 80s, 90s. So that's some of the things we have added on. And I know there are some of the students from the program that are listening in tonight, actually.
Super. Well, I'm glad they're here.
Recognize what I'm talking about.
Now, is this diploma program the same program that's associated with the kind of the group of students and former students that grow this collection of gem material that's available for research?
Yes, there was a part of it actually already there when I got there, and the idea is not to build a museum and pretty things that are nice in showcases, but to build a study collection. So we have a lot of broken stuff, or we get the broken stuff from the jewelers or from the high jewelry houses. You know, for example, we have a 5-carat diamond that may sound very glorious. However, it was broken when they set it, so it's actually fractured, but it's a 5-carat diamond. We'll take it. We do this sort of accumulation of sample that might be useful. So of course we bought synthetic diamond as they evolve. So there is an association of the former students and friends of the program, I'll say. That's called the CRG. The program itself is called the DUG, D-U-G. It's taught in English now. Bernard taught it in French, and thank God he didn't try to teach it in English, because his English is still to this day atrocious. It makes me, I feel it in my belly when he speaks English. I'm like, no, please stop. So I started teaching in English maybe 10 years ago, but that was not continuous. I tried, but here for the last 3 years, we've taught in English. So that's also a big change. And this association has developed this collection. It's been increased because we got donations to the university, actually. So it's not the association's collection. Actually, nowadays, the big problem I have is I have 4 owners to this collection. We have the association, which is the CRG, the Centre de Recherche Gémologique for the French-speaking people. We have whatever donation got officially to the university. So we have that, and we had a very significant donation from Cartier, and we had a very significant donation from Repossy, which is also from the famous Place Vendôme, Rue de la Paix in Paris. And we have also some jewelers who just, when they're retired, or many jewelers have that box at the back of the safe where there's all the junk. And so we'll take it. And sometimes you have really interesting stuff in there. Of course, there's junk too, true junk, but
of course,
that's okay. And so we don't catalog the junk. We try to have a catalog of the collection. So if you want to show that page, actually, that Excel page, which is sort of a random example of what we have in the collection. So I try to find one. So it's all in French, but toward the bottom, you have diamonds, and they are rough diamond. And that's, I went to Antwerp to sort of look at colored diamonds from an Antwerp diamond dealer. And he was a diamond cutter also. And so he wanted to pay me. I said, well, I'd appreciate to be paid in diamond, actually, because I could use them for research. And so I collected some diamonds with a UV lamp. I got, do you see me? The screen went black. Okay. they were all orange luminescing. That was my criterion. So they are very unique diamonds, which I believe have oxygen as an impurity. So that's one of the ways we increase the collection. But if you look at that page, there are all kinds of other things that we had sort of randomly, depending on what we buy. So we have a cubic zirconia CZ, that's the first line. We have garnet glass doublets, triplets. We have Slocum stones. We have a natural spinel. We have more glasses. We have a synthetic ruby, a synthetic spinel, and so on and so forth. So it's whatever we're able to acquire that seems to be of interest because of its gemological property. Could be the inclusions, could be the color, could be the spectrum, could be the luminescence, which I've studied very much lately, but I've also done a lot of work on the origin of color, including that article with George, actually, where we sort of made a systematic review of that. So all of these kind of themes are interesting to me, but so to the students as well, or to the people who refer to us because they have a problem. So this is a teaching collection. It's not intended to be pretty. So actually, if you can show those black cases I have in my office, I have several pictures of those that I sent you. And so it's most of it is cataloged and it's in those black cases. You can see, and it's those cubic inch boxes in there in which you find those specimens. It's cataloged more or less. It's we try to put as much detail as we know on the stone, but it's not always very easy to do, and we don't always have the time actually to catalog things. When you get a huge donation, for example, from Cartier, with thousands of stones, you can't catalog all of them on the spot. So we've cataloged those that were more interesting, and we still have bags that are not quite cataloged. But then probably it's only because we have already 10 times the same thing in the collection. So just keep it in the bag in the safe now. So this is
I think these pictures are inside those black. Sorry, we're having connection issues.
Yeah, that was an interesting picture you just had with the Akmanite box. Actually, not very many people have an Akmanite box. So for those who are not familiar with that, that's a variety of sunlight. When you put UV on it, it becomes dark purple, but then by revert under daylight to strictly colorless and everything in between. So that was a PhD topic, and we studied the mechanism for that. There's a proposed mechanism we don't necessarily agree with. And so actually the origin of the defect is actually quite what you'd call a color center. It's a missing chlorine atom in the structure, and that is able to create color actually. And why this color comes and goes is because you put UV on it. UV is energy. For example, UV will cause sunburn, meaning it's some energy indeed. And so that energy is enough to create many of those defects. And mostly you are moving electrons around in the stone. And so those electrons move to a defect that's strongly absorbing light and giving a purple color. And then sometimes if you have a fiber optic illumination, you put the stone underneath it, and for the best specimen, almost instantly they become colorless. So that's what fascinated us. But one aspect to that is that could potentially have industrial application as optical memories, for example. And that's why we try to understand the defect in great detail, see if we could be created synthetically. People know how to make synthetic Akmanite, actually, but as a powder, not as single crystals. And this could potentially be used for optical memory. So we try to also take in gemology what could be interesting in the industry or in academics also, and sort of bridge the gap between science and industry and what we do in gemology. There's lots of things to be done there in terms of learning from each community. A lot is known in several communities, like some of the physics community or the people who study the breaking of things, for example. We don't have in gemology, and if we translate that knowledge and transfer it to gemology, we'll understand better why certain stones break easily, whereas their polycrystalline variety, for example, are much more resistant. This sort of thing. And of course, there are lots of things relating to color or luminescence, which are two of my favorite topics at the moment, which could be done. So also, through a few PhDs, I have the good luck to have, and I had mostly excellent students, actually, who were able to do some really interesting things.
Very, very interesting. Now, tell us about this image. This is another one of the storage boxes opened up there.
Yes, that's a box that's dedicated to a current story. Over the years, I accumulated imitation glasses that were traditionally fabricated in east of France, in the Jura area. And so I learned about the story first from an old lady. I gave a speech, a general speech about gemology to a group of retired rich ladies, we say. And so one of the ladies came up to me at the end of the talk and said, "Oh, but in my family, we used to do imitation gemstone in east of France." I said, "Wow, that's really interesting. Tell me more about it." So actually, I ended up visiting her in her apartment where she had a bunch of such stones. She also had the furnace that they used to melt them because they would buy bars of glass from companies around Paris. And during the winter time, when they couldn't do anything in the east of France because you had up to 2 meters of snow outside, so in the farms or in small industry, so it was sort of a cottage industry for a good long time, they would melt those things and cut them. And when spring came about, they'll go and sell them. So they will do that originally in the farms that turned into a small industry. And still today, you have large companies that have inherited that tradition. So I accumulated quite a collection of those old glasses, and they are very colorful. And of course, the origin of colorless glass is supposed to be well known, but actually there are so many different glasses that there are so many varieties. Some are very well known, some you really need to establish more firmly. And so we're studying that collection, try to establish a refractive index, specific gravity, which is rarely documented for glasses, origin of color, maybe the luminescence, maybe of interest as well. Of course, the internal feature, mostly bubbles and flow structure, but so we're trying to document that imitation gems because we feel that glass have not been treated well in the gemological community. And so we'll start with these historical glasses, actually, well known as imitations. And actually, they are everywhere, except that no one pays attention to them. So that's one of the special projects we're working on at the time.
Well, I love that. We're talking about imitation things. I'm going to switch to this image, which is going to lead into the next one. But this is, well, describe to the viewers what we're looking at here.
So we have also large specimens that don't fit in a cubic inch box. So what do you do with them? Well, you put them in larger boxes. So that's what we have downstairs. So these are tools that are intended for box or screws or things like that. And so we put specimens in there. So you see pearls. That's a topic that we do teach about, but we haven't talked much about so far. So we've quite a pearl collection, actually. And the big box in the front says luminescence. So you have lots of luminescing specimens in there that are kind of convenient to do a demonstration to an entire class because they are big. And the bright color thing is a uranium glass. And the thing on the right has a really interesting luminescence. It's a quartz, which is quartz are supposed to be inert, most of them. But this was luminesces because it has inclusions which are sort of opal-like, and so those luminesce. And in the back, it's a box with larger synthetic gemstones. And what you have on top of the box is actually a rather unique synthetic. And if you care to, yeah, that's the one. That's a synthetic blue phenakite. which I never found the time to study, but that was coming from Russia. We had a former student that traveled to Russia, and I told him, so if you find anything kind of odd, please get it. So he got that. He got all sorts of oddities that we have in the collection, but this one is actually a rather magnificent crystal. As you can see, it's like 5 centimeters large. And I never found the time to study, unfortunately, this phenakite, which has an interesting blue color to it. So I tried to convince some of my Duke students to do that, but no one is interested, unfortunately.
Well, this is fascinating because, and I'll explain it to the viewers. Obviously, I'm not explaining it to you. Phenakite is usually clear. If it's not clear, it's got a tint of yellow, maybe very, very, very light pink. In fact, the word phenakite itself actually means deceiver, which it was named that because it looks so much like quartz. And so to get a phenakite of this color is absolutely mind-blowing. How was this created? Do you have any idea?
It's probably flux grown, that is mean grown in a solution of molten salt. And this is the way many of these synthetics are grown. And just from the shape and the fact that you can see when you look at the bottom of the specimen, the not pretty part, actually, it contains a lot of information. It's not photographed here, but the other side tells you he was sitting in a crucible. So that what makes me think it's really a flux-grown synthetic. What amazes me is someone would want to grow large synthetic phenakite. What was their purpose? So the Russians are famous for growing very bizarre things. Sorry. So especially a colored phenakite, you know, so I figured if I see this, I have to grab it now because I'll never see one again. And indeed, that's the only one I know. And it's a shame I never found time to study it, but it's always fascinated me, actually. And it was cheap, too.
When you sent me this picture, my eyes just kind of bulged out because we know, I mean, phenakite from Russia, from Sri Lanka.
Burma.
Some phenakite has been found in Colorado, kind of around the Pikes Peak area, but never one like this. And it just, wow, amazing.
But, you know, the phenakite from Colorado, actually from the Mogok area, they're twinned, actually. And they are colorless, as you said earlier. And the crystals are 1 or 2 centimeters. That's considered large, actually, or 3 centimeters. But this one is much larger than that, and it's colored. Unfortunately, it's not twinned, but then we'll explain later to the onlookers why this is not favorable for me. But it's a very interesting specimen, and we have a few oddballs like that. We love accidental growth, you know, the growth that didn't go right. So there were growth accidents. We have like spinel bottles, synthetic spinel bottles grown by flame fusion that fell on top of each other and do a weird aggregate. One of them looks like a microscope. This kind of stuff we love. We collect for the association, for the students, and for future reference as well, of course. The collection will be kept alive, I'm sure, by my people coming after me.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're leaving behind a great legacy. I want to kind of move on here. And after this, we're going to kind of switch a little bit to minerals, but explain to us what we're looking at here.
Okay, so corundum, that is ruby or sapphire, is a very common gem. And of course, you all know about the red luminescence of ruby, which is due to chromium. Now, less of you might know about the blue shortwave luminescence of corundum, which is fairly common. You find in synthetics and also heat-treated stones. And it's due to titanate groups, actually. And so that has been refined. We actually published last year something about that in corundum and other minerals. But the third most common luminescence is this orange luminescence, well known to gemologists. And when I looked at that orange luminescence, I was always wondering what causes it, because it's not obvious, you know. And finding the origin of luminescence is, in my view, even harder than finding the origin of color, because color is often an absorption phenomenon. But luminescence means that you first had absorption and then you had emission behind it. So it's a two-step process. So the cause is even more remote than for the origin of color. So I was fascinated by that. We did a DUG, a very good DUG actually, by Olivier Segura, like, what was it, around 2010. It was very informative, did some spectra, realized it was due to a color center which give the orange, may give an orange color actually to corundum, that you find that color in natural corundum, you find it in synthetic corundum, you find it in beryllium diffuse corundum also. So there were so many, the intersection proved that it had to be an intrinsic defect to corundum. And to make a long story short, recently published an article where we propose, because it's very hard to actually prove things 100%, but we propose that it's due to a defect in the structure where you have aluminum being surrounded by 6 oxygen. You have 2 of those, and in each of those there is an oxygen missing. And to compensate for the missing electrons, you have probably a divalent cation, probably magnesium 2+, but it could be beryllium 2+, it could be probably other 2+ cations, and that compensates for the missing electrons. And the whole thing in itself produces energy levels that are responsible for this orange emission. And that was a very progressive study, perhaps over 10 years, but not working on it all the time, of course. But I love that picture. You have the same picture with the same stone in natural light, which you have a collection of natural synthetic. This beautiful plate was created by a former Duke student who, at one point, directed the French lab and then moved on to a school run by Van Cleef and Arpels, which is a well-known high jeweler. And this shows the diversity of sapphires or corundum in which you could find this luminescence, sometimes zone, sometimes not zone, and all that. So after many suppositions, we finally concluded that it must be something like what we propose. So a defect that involves defect intrinsic to the corundum with a little bit of a trace, that would be magnesium, which is well known actually as a trace element in corundum. So that's one of those research topics that we like to concentrate on where we can.
I love it. I love it. So we've been talking a lot about gemology, but you are also a mineral collector. However, your collection is very specific. Share with us a little bit your passion of minerals and why these specimens are so specific for you.
All right. So basically, when I got hooked up on minerals, when I go to a mineral show, I wanted to buy everything. That's kind of a problem because I've never been rich. So
familiar problem, I'm sure, to all of our viewers.
So I had to find a criterion by which I would considerably reduce the choice of specimen I'd be likely to buy. So at the time, I was doing my military duties as a scientist in Grenoble, in the French Alps. And as many of you might know, in the French Alps, you find beautiful Japan-Low twins of quartz, which, of course, in French, we don't call them Japan-Low, we call them Lagardette twins, because that's the name of a famous deposit for this kind of twins. But so I got interested in the phenomenon of twinning. And luckily enough, right next door was a lab in which they worked on ice, which is kind of understandable because you have glaciers almost next door in Grenoble. And the people that were there had actually quite a bit of knowledge about twinning in ice, believe it or not, and silicon. Actually, they worked with colleagues working on silicon. So I got introduced to twins from the mineral collecting point of view, and also from the hard physics or material science point of view. So it was very interesting. I still today collect both natural twins and also synthetic twins, actually, because I find both very fascinating. And a lot of people don't understand what a twin is. So let me just do a little demonstration. So here you have a very nice twin calcite. I believe it's from Missouri. And I got that one for those who remember him, to John Sinkankas. If there's anybody remembering John, I like to say thanks to him, because I was lucky enough when I was at GIA, they donated his book connection to GIA. And so they asked for volunteers to go pack it up. So I volunteered. And while we were packing books, we discussed minerals. And so he sold to me some of the minerals in his collection. And this is one of them. I have several others. And in
what a
this,
cool story.
You can see what a twin is. So you can clearly see that actually you have a central division. You have a mirror image of one crystal into the next. So you have two crystals of calcite in this case, which are mirrored in the twin planes. So it's an association of two crystals of the same mineral species, but the way they are associated is not random at all. It's actually related to the symmetry of the crystal lattice. That's where it gets a bit technical. And the way you know it's a twin and not a random intergrowth is, for example, I'm not going to give an entire class on twinning, but if you look through the specimen, you can clearly see that you see no separation between the two crystals here. It's optically clear right through. So because there's no physical limit, that means they share part of the network. Both crystals share part of the lattice. So that's how there is an optical continuity. If there are two different crystals, you'd see a limit between the two crystals. So these are twins. So this is a simple one. There are far more complicated ones. You have single twins, you have multiple twins, you have all sorts of morphology. You have crystals that twin very easily, like calcite, the spinel, of course, fluorite. But in calcite, you have a lot of variety of twins. In spinel, that's a spinel twin, which has a fair amount of variety, but it's little known to people. Fluorite has not that much variety, but some variety to it. So basically, I decided to concentrate on twinning. And so after a while, I got most of what's available on the market. After you buy 20 or 30 rutile twins, V-shaped rutile twins, you start to say, okay, maybe I'll stop right there. Then even for isoide twins, you have kind of a V-shaped type of thing. Well, I may have 8 of them. So after a while, you're like, okay, all right. So after a while, you go to a mineral show, and there are very, very, very few specimens of interest, actually. Even in the Tucson show. Last year, I went to the Tucson show. I didn't spend all my money, actually. I bought a really interesting fluorite twin because I like, to me, a really ideal specimen for my collection is one that is twinned, of course, but may combine with another one of my passions, which might be color or luminescence. So if it's twinned and interestingly colored, that's great. Or if it's twinned and luminescent, that's great too, So actually, that flat spinello twin actually in fluoride had irradiation stains. And you could see there are little black minerals, and around them you have a purple halo. Or halo, rather. Forgive the French accent, sorry. I didn't quite get rid of it. Everybody knows it already, so it's no point in apologizing. So this is, combining color with twins. And if you want to show, I have a green aragonite specimen from Spain. And when you put blue, what they call a blue laser, which is actually a violet laser, 405 nanometer laser, which is what you do Blu-ray with. So it's why it's called blue laser. There you go. You see, this is kind of greenish aragonite crystals. And when you put the laser on it, you have a pink luminescence. And so this is very interesting because pink is never a single luminescence. I've never seen one broad band of emission that gives a pink color. Most of the time, it's two emissions. It's orange and blue. So you have that in aragonite. You may have that in some calcite. So the orange is generally in the carbonates from manganese, and the blue is from something else. So we won't discuss the origin of the blue luminescence, but could be organic materials, could be a bunch of different things. And it is a color twin, and color twins are not that many. And so it's kind of greenish, as you can see. And unfortunately, I don't have a precise locality on that one because it was old stock from a French dealer. And I told him, if in your old stock you run across interesting twin, just pull them out for me, would you? So he came up with that. So that was great. So there is another specimen that has an interesting luminescence, which we have a photograph of. If you would switch to that one. I was fortunate enough to go to Namibia for a gemological conference. And of course, in Namibia, you have the Erongo Mountain deposit, in which you can find a lot of things, but feldspars, black tourmaline, and also iolite opal. So what you have here is a specimen where Carlsbad twin feldspar, 3 of them, covered literally with iolite opal, and I had it luminous toward the bottom of the specimen, where you see that green luminescence of iolite opal, which is due to uranium traces in the form of the uranyl molecular ion, actually, which is a typical green luminescence you find in opal. And therefore, you may find that in agates. If you have any agate and they fluoresce green, that's probably because of a little bit of opal in them that fluoresces green, and that's uranium related, actually. So that's a cool specimen because it associates twin with luminescence. So you see, I'm a very demanding collector now.
Okay, now you have an interesting story about these 2 pieces with the hole in it.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us this.
These are still my personal property, but I bought them when I went to Mogok. I was fortunate that the Asian Institute for Gemological Sciences, AIGS in Bangkok, invited me to Mogok not once, but twice, actually. So we wrote actually a book on that with Kennedy Ho, the Ho brothers, Henry and Kennedy, in the jewelry tower there in Bangkok. And so I wrote a book about Mogok, but these 2 specimens, if you could put back on, they have holes in them. So you see them very well on the right specimen. That's a dark Spinello twin, which is actually broken. But as you can clearly see, there are 2 holes in there. And these are actually in the plane, in the twin plane. And what you have in the twin plane often is you have dislocations, which are linear defects, slight deformation locally of the crystal lattice. And this can promote growth. So they help growth in the twin plane. Those Spinello twin often are quite flat. They are not flattened, but they grew preferentially on their sides. Therefore, they look flat. And so when these dislocations, which help the growth, revert, that the condition reverts, and from growth you go to dissolution, which is exactly the reverse of growth. Well, the dissolution goes enormously faster along the dislocation than it goes along a flat crystal surface. So it's been measured only in one case. I know that was in synthetic quartz, and they measured that along a dislocation, dissolution will go 1,000 times faster than along the crystal face. So basically what happened, the crystal face hardly dissolved, and the dislocation totally dissolved and actually makes a hole through the piece that had been broken. So you have 2 parallel holes here. You could put a string through, actually, if you wanted to. And on the left, it's a moonstone. It has crystal faces. They're much harder to see, but you have 3 holes in there. And it's exactly the same phenomenon, but on a moonstone feldspar from Mogok, actually. So dissolution is actually fairly common in moonstone from Mogok. Some of you may have heard about the variety of moonstone from Mogok, which is called a bamboo moonstone, because there are things inside the moonstone that look like bamboo, and those bamboo are caused by dissolution. That was the subject of one of our digs some years ago from a guy who now works at the French Gemological Lab. So yeah, that was a kind of an interesting topic there.
I love it. Let's stick with twinning and switch to pseudomorphs.
Oh yeah, that's a cool one. So these pseudomorphs of hematite after magnetite are very well known from Argentina. This is a fairly large specimen, but can you see why I got it? So if you look carefully toward the bottom center of the specimen, then you have this. And if you pay attention right in the middle or slightly to the right, you have a spinel low twin of magnetite, actually, which got transformed in hematite. And I've never seen that again. That's the only specimen on which I saw a spinel low twin. I'd be very curious to know if other mineral collectors like me have seen a twinned magnetite in those pseudomorph specimens, actually, because that's the only one I ever saw. It's the twin is maybe 1 centimeter. Actually, it's quite sizable. It's a nice specimen. Very proud of that one. So
Very
if a
interesting.
twin is pseudomorph, that's two reasons to buy the specimen. I have other pseudomorphs. I have a six-ray starlight twin, you know, the six-ray star kind of twin, complex
Sure.
twin, which is pseudomorphed in mica, for example. I have one of those.
Well, you know, here in Hawaii, we don't have a lot of minerals, but we do have sulfur. Now, this is a sulfur twin, but it's a synthetic sulfur. Tell us about this guy.
I think so. I found that just looking through the drawers in the lab, because they used to, originally that lab was doing crystal growth. And so sometimes they move furniture without even opening the drawer, I think. And so I asked for permission, of course, but one of the former directors who was actually doing some of that crystal growth said, hey, if you find anything interesting and you can make something of it, please take it. So they were actually, I found two things that look like sulfur twins. So they are described actually in Sicily. You find some images of twins actually in the Goldschmidt, I believe. But I never found a natural specimen. So when I ran across that, I was like, yeah, there, twin sulfur, you know, two specimens at once. So I like very much that one. So I preserved it. I think it would have been thrown away otherwise.
Sure, sure. I love it. Let's do one final piece. I love the big uglies. Um, talk to us about this one.
Okay, this one is actually a very complex spinel low twin. It's a cyclic twin, and if you look towards the center of the specimen, you have a very dark area. And if you look very closely, the photograph is very bad because it's my photograph. Unfortunately, I don't have the opportunity to make better photographs, but I should ask the French lab really. But it's a cyclic twin there. It's a triple twin. So what I like to do when I have big, ugly specimens like that are very complex twin, I like to draw them in my catalog and sort of caption, you know, what they really are, what the crystallography really is. So if you can show that page of the catalog, actually, not the right one, wrong one.
Yeah,
That's
let
the
me.
article on orange luminescence.
Here we go.
Yeah, that one. So that's that. That's a spinel, so it's in French. That's from Mahenge in Tanzania. So you have everything. You have the dimension. You have who I got it from, which is my friend Laurent Gautron. It's a friend from my engineering school, so a long-time friend who is also, as a side job, is a mineral dealer. So I got it from him. And see, I drew the twin from two different angles. And so I colored the various elements of the twins. And so it's actually a triple spinel low twin. So it's not the full uh, uh, cyclic twin, which you need 5 individuals for that. And so it's 4 twins. It's a triple twin, but that's already pretty rare. You have a single twin attached to it, which is in red and orange. And so you have a different view from the specimen, and the arrows point to the twin planes, actually. So that's number 783 in the collection. I paid 200 euros for it. And if you look up at the top of just above the specimen listing, I bought it at the mineral show in Charenton in Paris in 2000. What does it say? 23rd December. And that was in 2022, actually.
Okay. Superb.
So that's the kind of species I like to collect. It's a complex twin, and in spinels you find very complex twinning and very surprising twinning also, with a strong modification of the morphology. So I have quite a few spinels in my collection, and I can't resist to show you one of the ugliest spinel twin I have. Can you bear with me for 1 second?
Sure. We love big uglies, so here we go.
So here we go. This ugly thing weighs over 1 kilo, and you can see actually the reflection on the crystal surfaces there. So it is a single crystal, presumably dissolved from marble. And in there somewhere there is a twin. I'll try to find it for you. I always have to look for it. So this is okay. The twin plane is right here. It's a partial twin. So I'm going to try to show that. Okay, in this position, if we shine the light on it, you see there is somewhat of a division here.
Okay.
All right, here you have one of the face of the reentrant angle that's shiny. And underneath you would have the other face of the reentrant angle of spinel twin. So you see all the top here of the specimen is that top twin, and all the bottom is the bottom twin. So it's a very ugly, you'd say shapeless, but actually there are some crystal faces on it. Got that in Vietnam, actually. I was fortunate to go to Lucian, and of course that was for the gem spinels, but we also had time to buy a lot of spinel twins from local dealers, actually, including that one, which I thought was great. I mean, I saw it was a twin and say, this is so ugly, I got to have it. So I use it actually as a pedestal for other spinel twins. So people say, what's that ugly thing? Say, oh, that's a twin.
Well, Manu, it may be ugly, but I'm glad that it brought you joy when you saw it and that you had to acquire it.
Yeah, well, you find joy where you can,
Absolutely. So now, Manu, you're retired now, is that correct?
Very recently, 1st of September, I retired, but I'm going to carry on and be what is called an emeritus professor.
Sure.
I applied for that, and it's in the process at the moment.
Wonderful. So now, what are you working on in your retirement? And you can go ahead and close that little pop-up window. That's for our viewers to do the quickfire 5.
Okay. Well, at the moment, I'm going to have to do one terrifying thing, which is emptying my office.
Yikes.
So,
time to expand on the house.
Last time I emptied my office, there were 55 moving boxes. So it's like a small apartment. It's all in one office. So it's filled up to the ceiling. So that's going to take probably about a year. So the collection is going to have to be moved to another room and so on and so forth. So I'm planning on a year for that, but it might take a little more, perhaps. And then I have,
that's the majority of 2025 for you.
Absolutely. And of course, I have research projects. I'm a fan of diamond morphology and twinning, because diamonds twin quite a bit. I have a small collection of very small twins. Most of them I procure by exchanging, time with diamond dealers and telling them about original color, other things, and getting paid in crystals, which is a very good deal if you can do that. So I wrote a book on diamond morphology with Ishiro Tsunagawa, who is a very well-known name in crystal growth, who passed away, I forgot exactly the year, maybe 2008 or something like that. But that book never got published. That's a long and convoluted story. I'll save you the story. We even have the prototype of it that went to the famous Frankfurt Book Fair, but it was never published. So that was 20 years ago, roughly. So I intend to rework that manuscript, integrate new pictures, and work with rough diamond dealers to take more and better pictures and do a book on the subject, which I think there is no real book on that subject actually at the moment. There may be a book on diamond rough from the point of view of cutting. There are general books on diamond with chapters on morphology, which are pretty good, but not always perfect. But there is not really a book on morphology of diamond. I'd like it to be also a bit of an atlas, lots of pictures, so it doesn't get boring. So that's one of the projects. Of course, many projects revolving around color and luminescence, and updating that famous Color in Gems article, but maybe do something more general for gems and minerals, and also perhaps rocks, because there's very little said about rock color. Not that it's easy to investigate, by the way, but at least there are some general things that can be said. And luminescence, of course, there's still several projects about origin of color. We have a project with a former PhD from the lab looking into iron titanium, and George knows we've talked about that project together. He's interested in the iron titanium charge transfer as well. That's the origin of color of blue sapphire. Everybody thinks it gives a blue color, but it can give you a brown color, can give you a pink color, and can give you a blue color. So just sort of a review of all the minerals that are colored by the charge transfer and their colors. And other topics that are more gemological, for example, the gemology of turquoise. That's a heck of a topic, actually. Turquoise is, people conceive it as a mineral. You should perhaps look at it as a rock. And most of what is called turquoise is not necessarily turquoise, but Cuprian planerite. So that's the mineral is actually planerite with copper. It's not quite enough copper to bring it up to be a true turquoise in many deposits. So there are lots of things to be said about turquoise and its gemology. It's a material very often imitated. It's a material very often treated by impregnation, actually, with polymers and such. And very little about the gemology of these materials being done, but it's a heck of a lot of work. So that would be about the size of the PhD, actually. So that's one of the projects I'd love to undertake if I can find financing for it. And there are quite a few, actually. But if someone brings me something, I might turn into a project. And for that, do you have those moldavite specimens? Can you put them up?
Absolutely.
It's a perfect example of what grabs my attention sometimes. This was brought by one of our former Duke students, who is now a dealer. And he said, well, I had a Chinese dude that offered moldavite and moldavite beads to me, actually. So but I got some, but I don't know, they look weird. Can you look at them for me? So the key information here is the guy was well-educated enough to realize there was something amiss with this thing. So from a distance, they look like moldavite, white color, the shape, perhaps, but not really. First thing that struck me is look at them under a microscope and you see gazillions of bubbles actually in there. And in natural moldavite, you will see normally a few bubbles, but not too many. So that was the first hint at, maybe this is not really natural moldavite. So if you move on to the two luminescence pictures, actually, these are the moldavite under shortwave UV. And you see that most of them actually fluoresce under shortwave. Natural moldavite, being containing a lot of iron, doesn't fluoresce under shortwave UV. So this is a unique behavior. And to me, that screams this is glass. You see that kind of shortwave luminescence. It's quite common in glass imitation. It's not that you find them in all the glass imitations, but quite a few of them have that. So these are the so-called mineral specimen. If you move on to the beads, actually, with the next picture, the beads actually fluoresce a strong blue. They were a different color, which was suspicious, and they fluoresce a strong blue shortwave. And that's a work that we finished in 2023. And that kind of blue luminescence in glasses, shortwave only, that's due to titanium. More precisely, the titanate group, which is a titanium with 6 oxygen around it, and electronic transition happening within that group, actually. And they fluoresce in shortwave, a very intense blue. And they are known in corundum, but they are also found in glasses, actually. So clearly, to me, you never see that in natural glasses. They don't contain titanate group, or they contain too much iron, one or the other, or both. And it's with simple gemological instrument, observation, a loupe, a UV lamp, you could tell for sure these were imitations. So this is the kind of work we love to do. But similar stuff had already been published. We found the article. Pretty good job was done by my colleague from Czechia, Jaroslav Jeršel, who is in Prague. And he published a note on separating natural from glass imitation moldavite. So we found not exactly the same thing, but very similar. So, but the luminescence, the origin of that luminescence could become a project, for example. The original color could become a project too, because the color origin is not the same as a natural moldavite and those imitations. They're quite different. The spectrum is quite different. So I don't know what it's caused by, but it might be worth looking into one day. But this is not a very important topic. The problem I find in gemology is we tend to concentrate on exceptions and don't consider the rule or the more common thing often enough. Gemology journals are full of articles on oddities and rarities, whereas really there is a lot to be learned that is found in the typical gems, and about the origin of the color, their luminescence, like that orange luminescence in corundum is very, very common. You see natural synthetic, so finding its origin was for us exactly what we should be doing. So do the complicated stuff, knowing that all.
Manu, it sounds like you're going to be more busy in your retirement than you were as a professor.
I love what I do, so that's not exactly your problem. But you have others like that, some of which you have interviewed, and George is a good example of that. George should be long retired if he was a French professor, but he's still alive and kicking and doing research and publishing and doing really fun stuff. So, and interesting stuff, scientifically interesting stuff. So I hope to be able to do sort of the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, now, Manu, we are 20 minutes past the hour. So as predicted, we've gone long. So we're going to go into the Q&A, but first we're going to do the quick fire 5 questions. Now, these are 5 questions that I'm going to ask you. Each question has 2 answers, and all of your answers are correct. The viewers have already seen these questions, and they have tried to guess how you will answer. So I'm going to ask you the questions. You will tell me which answer you resonate with most strongly, and we'll see how correct our viewers are. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 1. Favorite dress code to give an important lecture? Wearing a bow tie because bow ties are cool, or wearing a necktie because there are so many colorful options?
Necktie.
Necktie. Ooh.
Well, now I have 500 at home, so I might as well wear them.
Okay.
Bow tie I have a few, but not many.
Gotcha. Okay. Question number 2. Favorite chocolate dessert? Chocolate chip cookie or chocolate fudge?
Chocolate chip cookie.
Oh. Question number 3. Favorite gem to play with? Chameleon diamond or hackmanite?
Oh, that's a tie. And not one you wear around your neck, actually. Do I have to? I'd say chameleon diamond.
Chameleon diamond. Okay. Question number, where are we? 3. Your favorite food? I don't care as long as it's French, or I don't care as long as I'm in good company.
Be the both. No, I'm not. I don't. I care about good food, but good company is important too. So I'm not I'll go for the second option.
Okay.
I like good food though, and good drink too.
Gotcha. And final question, your favorite way to make a joke, by a spoonerism, or as you would say in French, contrepétrie, or by playing with words?
Well, punnerism or playing with words is kind of the same thing. So I'll go for the puns, whichever answer that corresponds to, actually.
Eloise, I'm going to have you make the call on it. Which category does the puns better fall under?
So the end, like basically the question was between contrepétrie and playing with words. So contrepétrie is like you switch.
I'm good at playing with words, puns and things like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And just for the viewers, I had to look this up also. Spoonerisms are where you switch the first pronunciation of two words or phrases. So it'd be like, instead of bad salad, it would be sad ballad, or belly jeans is jelly beans, or boar's head is, well, you can figure that one out. So...
But it still makes sense. It still makes sense.
Yeah. One of my favorites is Dummy and Mad, which is Mummy and Dad.
Mummy and Dad. That's a good one.
Okay. Who's doing? I guess Eloise, you're doing the quickfire today, right?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. Question number 1: favorite dress code to give an important lecture? Bow tie or necktie? Manu went with necktie. What did our viewers say?
Well, he's wearing bow tie, so I think that was disturbing. So yes, we got it wrong here, but you know.
I would have gotten that one wrong. In fact, I did. Okay. Favorite chocolate dessert? Question number 2: chocolate chip cookie or chocolate fudge? Manu went with the cookie. What did our viewers say?
Fudge.
Fudge.
So,
okay.
But we didn't talk about chocolate at all, so yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, but at least we're consistent here.
Yeah.
Favorite gem to play with? Chameleon diamond or Hackmanite? Manu went with the diamond. What did our viewers say?
Diamond as well, but Manu has to explain what a chameleon diamond is now.
Oh, okay. That's a fun stone. So that's a stone that when you leave it in daylight, it'd be like not terribly attractive gray-green. But then either you put it in the dark for one night, and then when you open the door of the safe, for example, the next morning, it's become bright yellow. And so that's the source of many stories. But the other way you can play with it is you have it that's that ugly greenish gray, and I did that to the Duke student like a day or two ago, and you put it just above the flame of a cigarette lighter, for example, not in the flame, above the flame. And from the heat, which is about 200-300 degrees there, it'll turn from that poor color to a bright yellow, even orange yellow in some cases, actually. So that's, in scientific terms, that's called thermochromism. If you change the color with the temperature, or if you change the color with the light environment, that'll be photochromism. So chameleon diamonds are diamonds that are photochromic and thermochromic, but to me, they are just toys.
Interesting. I love that. Okay. See, you always learn something new when you watch Mineral Talks Live. Okay, let's go to question number 4. Favorite food? I don't care as long as it's French, or I don't care as long as it's with good company. Manu went with good company. What did our viewers say?
Good company. I think that they hope to have dinner with Manu in Tucson or something.
Manu, are you going to Tucson this year or next year?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic.
I'll give a talk at the Accredited Gemologist Association, the AGA, there on the 5th.
Super. You know, I filmed the talks there, so I'll see you there. I'm going to be filming you.
Oh, okay. Very good.
And you actually won the award for the Bonanno Award from the AGA back in 2013, I think.
You did your homework. That's very good. Yeah, I'm sure someone helped you. So just to reinforce the point that I like good company, I had lunch with Eloise, I think 2 days ago, or was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. So that's the kind of lunch I like. It was also
Absolutely.
good food, but the important part was being in good company.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was actually
One last
trying to
question.
pull. I thought I had a picture here. Oh, actually, I do. Speaking of lunch in good company, there I am with my wife and my son when we were in Paris having lunch with Eloise and her crew from
Oh, oh
from
yeah.
the school. So no,
Yeah.
I get you 100%. Good company for lunch. That was excellent. All right. Final question. Favorite way to make a joke? Spoonerism, again, a new term for me. I had to look it up. Or by playing with words. You went with
Puns.
puns. You went with option 2, puns. What did our viewers say?
Yeah, they did the same way. Yes.
Oh, okay. So that was the
So, it's
tiebreaker.
hard. I have to say something, for
Yes.
students listening to Manu giving classes in French, they have to, by the end of one day of having Manu as a teacher, they probably have heard 10 or 12 of those. So by the end, you laugh, but by the end of the week, you don't laugh anymore. They're just like, very funny. Yeah, sure. Very funny, Manu. Yeah.
So the laughs
So
turned
hi
to
to the
groans.
students who have to deal with it for
Humor is a good way
this.
to entertain the class, so it's not too boring. So when it gets too boring, you make a joke, and people generally love it. And I'm so sad that Eloise doesn't like my jokes, but
20 years of them, Manu, 20 years.
They're just
well, she
getting
was my
better and
PhD
better.
student. For those who don't realize that, Eloise was my PhD student. Well, what was that? 20 years ago already? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh boy.
No. That's impossible. Eloise is only 21.
Sure. Mhm.
Yes. I'm only 35.
All right, let's go to the Q&A. Do we have any questions from the viewers that Manu can answer?
Sure, Raquel, do you want to go ahead? No. Okay, so we had a good question by George Adelman. So he presumed that you use Raman spectroscopy. What database do you use for Raman spectra of gemstones?
That's a loaded question. So, like everybody else doing Raman spectroscopy on minerals, we use the very useful RUF database. So I have to spell that out. That's RRUFF. And everybody tries to find out the acronym. It's not. If I'm correct, that's the name of the cat of the sponsor of the project. So that's the RUF database. Very useful. There is a program that goes along with it, which is called Crystal Sleuth. And so you load your spectrum that you found, you have no idea what it is, in a database. And by, I suppose, shape recognition, it'll match it if it's in the database. So it can be very useful. Yeah, everybody uses it. Those are the RUF database. And that's the project was initiated by Bob Downs at the University of Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. So, hi, Bob.
That is correct. And Bob was one of our past guests on Mineral Talks Live.
Yeah, and Raquel put the link in the chat. So if you want to know more about it, please click on it. Andrew,
ladies and gentlemen, welcome Raquel back to the show.
Oh my God. We're good at poking today. Okay, let's continue. So Andrew had a question about staurolite crosses. Do you know if they're considered as twins? Because he has some specimens from Franklin in New Jersey.
Okay, yeah, the crosses in staurolite, actually, now we have 8 twin lows possible. So people think there are only 2. So you have the 60-degree cross and the 90-degree cross. Actually, it was studied in detail. I think that was by Donne, actually, a famous American crystallographer, who actually studied many specimens. But as you know, staurolite is very impure So doing the crystal orientation on that is not exactly easy. So recognizing twin laws is very difficult. So, okay, well, we have 7 possible twin laws at the time. And we found 3 of them for sure. So because it's very difficult, he concluded in the article the other 4 must exist, but basically it's just too much work. We'll stop there. So, and since then, my colleague Yves Muello from Nantes actually came up with a new twin law for staurolite. It was published in European Journal of Mineralogy, I believe.
Yeah, it was in
2019,
2019, like, because Romain answered the question from Andy in the Q&A. So it was Nespolo and Muello in European Journal of Mineralogy.
So they look like kind of the 60-degree twin laws, but however, the crystal faces don't distribute the same around, so there are different twin laws.
Perfect. Thank you.
They're from Russia.
Next questions are screw dislocations. Are screw twins rare? Screw twins rare?
Okay. I'm not sure what you call screw twins. I talk about screw dislocations, which enhance growth. You mean twins that go like a screw, like an helix, actually? I've never seen such things.
I don't know more than that.
I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay. Mount enterophenakite is a pale brown that we found, but fades slowly in daylight. That's Leonard asking the question. Do other colorless phenakite localities ever produce colored crystals that fade? Do you know?
I'm not aware that, I don't know if fading here would mean that you couldn't restore actually the color. The ones I've seen from Mount Antero, I would call them near colorless. So I didn't notice any color or any fading. I have some twin ones actually. But I've never heard of that in phenakite actually. Fading basically relates to the stability of a color center, a complex defect inside the crystal structure. And so it fades if, for example, it's caused by an electron that's ejected and that has the possibility over time to come back in place. So it kills the color center. And that will be done through the little bit of heat that's available at room temperature. So that's the fading. Most of the time, that's what happens when a color fades.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And the last question I had in the Q&A is from Bob Morgan asking, have you used luminescence to study twin boundaries?
No, I haven't, because the twin boundaries are strange beasts, actually. And there's something happening at the twin boundary, which is not exactly what theory tells you, actually. I have a colleague in Ljubljana University who does transmission electron microscopy on twins. Actually, she does other things, but that's kind of her hobby, scientific hobby. Quite an expensive and complicated one, but she has published really interesting work on twinning. It shows that things that happen at the twin plane are a bit unexpected. For example, she demonstrated that in spinel low twins from Mogok, you have beryllium atom on the twin plane. And so I thought that was a very interesting observation. So she went one step further. She contacted someone that could grow synthetic spinel for her in flux, and they added beryllium to one crucible and didn't add beryllium to the other crucible. And guess what? If there was no beryllium, there was no twins. If there was beryllium, there were twins.
Interesting.
And that's happening on the twin plane. So you wouldn't see that in luminescence, but there certainly are curious things happening in twin planes. So what I did is I sent her spinel twins from Tanzania and Sri Lanka and Vietnam, and to see if she could find beryllium there. So I don't have the answer yet, but she has been studying other kinds of twins as well, cassiterite among others.
Okay, cool.
So things happening on the twin plane, a bit of mystery still going on there.
Mm-hmm. All right, and I mean that was all in the Q&A. Everybody's wishing us and you all the best for the holiday season, and I've seen that in some part of the world it's like actually almost snowing. Some people have like 0 degrees. So thanks for sharing all of those news with us as well at the same time. So it's fun to hear from you guys. And Manu, so we had plenty of congratulations. Thanks for the lecture. A lot of good things. I don't know if Raquel, did you see any other questions from the Q&A?
You
No.
covered all of that, and I was on the way.
When is the next episode? Is the next question? So that's gonna be for you, Brian.
Okay. All right. Well, want to thank all of you viewers for tuning in today. Manu, want to thank you extensively for spending the morning, afternoon, evening, whatever your time zone is, with us. Really appreciate all the time that you've spent with us. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, Happy New Year. Tune back in January. We're going to have another great show, but it will not be the first Wednesday in January, despite what I said in the opening, because the first Wednesday in January is January 1st. And there's no way I can do a show at 8 a.m. on January 1st. So we're actually going to move it to the second Wednesday. So tune in January 8th, 2025. We will be right here, Mineral Talks Live. Hope to see you. Everybody, take care. Be safe. We'll see you next year.